So today we're going to be learning lesson 8-8, which is completing the square. Um, Typically, this lesson would be taught before lesson 8-9, but I think you guys have learned 8-9 first. Completing the square, I really wanted to be with the class to teach this lesson because it can be a bit confusing. But as long as you follow these steps on this method, then you should be able to solve these easily. Now, the point of completing the square is just like the point of using the quadratic formula or by factoring a trinomial, and that is to find your solutions, which are also known as zeros or your x-intercepts. So when you get down to the bottom, just like this example down here, you should end up with one or two solutions. Most of the time, you're going to have two solutions. Okay. So you're starting with a trinomial. Sometimes your A will be one, sometimes it will not. And then you're going to follow all of these steps. And yes, there are about 7 steps in order to get your final answer. Okay. So on this first page, the thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk you through this one example here. I'm going to show you a few things on the side that's taking place because if you just read the instructions, sometimes it can be a bit confusing. Okay, so we're starting out with x squared minus 14x minus 15. Now remember that this is your A term, this is your B term, and that's your C term. So when you're reading the instructions and I say either one of those terms, those are the terms that I'm referring to. So the first step here says that after writing out your problem, meaning after writing out this problem on your paper, move term C, so move term C, which is negative 15, to the other side of the equation. First step. So all we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to move it over. And if you notice on step 1, that's what we did. So we just basically added 15 to both sides. Oops. And we moved it over. Okay. Step 2, factor out the GCF if needed. You have to begin with term A as 1. So what that means is that you must have your first term as 1. If it's not 1, you have to factor out any GCF if there is one. And I'm going to show you on the third page of your notes. If you look at example 5 right here, give you a minute to turn there. You can also pause the video at any time. But notice that, first of all, term C has already been moved over. But also, you have a GCF here of 4. And so before you would even start this, you would factor out the GCF of 4 and then move on, okay? So let's go back to the example on page 1. In this case, because term A is 1, there is no factoring needed. So we can move down to step 3. Now, this looks very confusing right here. So let's go up and read the step first. It says take half of term B, square it, and then add it to both sides of the equation. Okay. And what you're doing is you're taking term B and you're dividing it by 2 and then you're squaring it. So let me show you what is happening here. We're going to take term B, which is 14. So 14. So this is B over 2 squared. So we're going to take, oh, here I go, messing up already. And I didn't bring any white out. All right, so we're going to take 14, divide it by 2, and square it. So let's do that. 14 divided by 2 is 7. We're going to square it. And 7 squared is 40. Sorry. 7 squared is 49. Okay. So this looks a little bit confusing right here, but if you just skip down to this right here, we're going to take the 49, okay, and we are going to add it to both sides of the equation. Okay, so let's go back up to the step. It says take half of term B. We did. We took half of term B. We divided it by 2 and we got 7. Square it. We squared it and we got 49. And then add it to both sides of the equation. So we're going to add it to both sides of the equation. Okay. Sometimes people think that's the most like complicated step to remember. So let's go ahead and move to step 4. It says factor out the quadratic side of the equation and add the other side of the equation. Okay, so if you look here, we're going to factor this and we're going to add this. All right, so over here, if we take x squared minus 14x plus 49, hopefully you notice these are two perfect squares. So we would end up with x minus 7, x minus 7. However, if you didn't, you would just find factors of 49 that give you a negative 14. And you should get negative 7, giving you, highlight this right here, giving you this right here. All right. And then when you add 15 and 49, you get 64. So let's go over that. Oh, before we go over that, you would then set this up to x minus 7 squared. Okay. So let's go over that again. We took half of term B and squared it, and we got 49, and we added it to both sides. Then we factored this out to x minus 7 squared, and we added this to 64. Okay, so I'm going to stop for just a second. I know that there are a lot of steps. I know that the first 2, 3, maybe even 4 times, you're going to have to really think about what you're doing, follow the steps exactly. But after you give this a chance, it's going to come a little bit more naturally. Now, I'm not expecting you to memorize these steps right now. I want you to use them on your homework. But it'll get a little easier as we go on. Okay. Now, let's go to step 5. Step 5 says to square both sides of the equation. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take this and we are going to square both sides. So that when we square this, if I have anything in here that is already being multiplied by itself, the opposite of that is to square root it, and it becomes x minus 7. So you just pull this out as x minus 7. And then the square root of 64 equals 8. So this becomes x minus 7 equals 8. Okay. Let's go down to step 6. Step 6 says set up 2 problems. One set equal to a positive result. So x minus 7 equals 8, positive 8. And one set equal to a negative result, a negative 8. So we're setting these up twice. And then step 7, solve for x, and you will have 2 solutions. So once we add 7 to both sides here, we get x equals 15. When we add 7 to both sides here, we get x equals negative 1. And then this here is your final answer. Okay. All right. So let's go to page 2. All right. And I put the steps up here so that we have them easily accessible. And then when we get to page 3, we'll try to remember those steps if we can. Okay. So after writing out your problem, move term C to the other side of the equation. So the problem's already written out for you. So we're going to move term C, which is negative 11, to both sides of the equation. So I'm going to take and add 11 to both sides of the equation. And we get x squared plus 10x equals 11. Oops. And that is step 1 right there. Okay. Step 2, factor out the GCF if needed. There is no GCF, so we do not have to do that one. A is already 1. We're going to move to step 3. Step 3 tells us to take half of term B. So we're going to take B divided by 2 and square it, and then add it to both sides. So let's do that. B is 10. So we're going to take 10. We're going to take half of it, which just means divide it by 2, and we're going to square it. So we end up with 5 squared, which equals 25. So this right here was step 3 because we skipped step 2. So let's go ahead and do that here. So we're going to take x squared plus 10x plus 25 equals 11 plus 25. So we took the 25 and we added it to both sides. Okay, right here and right here. So this also was step 3. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to step 4. We're going to factor out the quadratic side of the equation and add the other side of the equation. So these are perfect squares. And when you have perfect squares, and this is a positive, we have x plus 5 times x plus 5 equals 11 plus 25 is 36. And remember, we need to end up writing this as x plus 5 squared equals 36. Okay. So we factored it out. That was step 4. Step 5 says to square both sides. So right here, we are going to square both sides. Okay. And when we square both sides, we end up with x plus 5 equals the square root of 36 is 6. Okay. And we could set this up as plus or minus 6, like that. That's usually how we set it up. All right, step 6, set up 2 problems. One set equal to the positive 6, and one set up to equal to the negative 6. So let's set that up. X plus 5 equals 6, and x plus 5 equals negative 6. So this was step 6 right here. Okay. And we're going to solve it. And that's step 7. We're going to solve for this. So we subtract 5 on both of these. And then we get x equals 1 and x equals negative 11. And this right here is our final answer. Okay. All right. I am going to do example 3, and then I'm going to have you try to do example 2 and 4 on your own. Okay. So let's go down to example 3. Again, we're going to follow the first step says after writing your problem, you're going to move term C to the other side. So we're going to add 9 to both sides. So we end up with x squared minus 8x equals 9. Okay, so that's step 1. Step 2 says to take half of term B, square it, and add it to both sides. So we're going to take half of term B. So we're going to take 8 divided by 2 and square it. So we get 4 squared, which is 16. Okay. So we're going to now finish. Oh, that was step 3, because step 2, it says factor out the GCF and we don't have any. So we're gonna take 16 and we're gonna add it to both sides. So this is gonna be step 3, because we had to skip step 2 because there was no GCF. So x squared minus 8x. We're gonna add 16 to both sides, so we'll add it to this side of the equation, and then we'll add it to this side of the equation. Okay. Step 4 says to factor out this quadratic and then add the other side of the equal sign. So this is step 4. Now this quadratic, because this is negative, that means I'm going to get an x minus 4 times x minus 4 equals 25. You can skip this part and go straight to x minus 4 squared if you want. Okay. Step 5 says to square both sides. So we are going to square root this side and square root that side. And we end up with x minus 4 equals plus or minus 5. Okay. Step 6 says to set up 2 problems, one equal to the positive 5, one equal to the negative 5. So x minus 4 equals a positive 5. X minus 4 equals a negative 5. And so now we're going to add 4 to both sides. Oops. Step 6. And we end up with x equals 9 and x equals negative 1. And that was step 7. And this is your final answer. Step 8 at this top says to check your solution with the original quadratic equation to make sure they're true. So what that means is that you can plug x back into this equation here just to see if it equals 0, and then check this one to see if it equals 0. And if it does, then you have done it correctly. Okay, what I would like for you to do now is I would like for you to try example 2 and 4 on your own. And when we come back, you are going to see the answers on the screen. So I at least, you can follow it step by step. Just go straight along here and follow each step the way that we did it. Once we check those, we'll move on to page 3. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to put the answers in front of the screen. If you're not ready, go ahead and pause the video. Here is example 2 and 3. You can see both of them. So I want you to go ahead and look at these. So you can pause the video right now, look at these, see if you did them correctly or where you might have made a mistake. But we are going to move on to example 4. So if you need to still keep looking at this, go ahead and pause the video. I'm sorry, we're going to move on to example 5. Okay. Okay, so here is example 5. I'm going to do 5 and 7 with you. You're going to do 6 and 8 on your own. So in looking at, if you follow the steps, it says after writing out your problem, move term C to the other side of the equation. That has already been done for us. 8 is already here. Okay. Step 2 says to factor out the GCF if needed. Well, if you look here, there is a GCF, so we are going to have to factor that out. And there's something a little bit different when we factor out the GCF here. So let's go ahead. The GCF is 4. We are going to factor that out. Okay. And normally when we factor out, we put the GCF on the outside of a parenthesis, but in this case, we just get rid of it. It's almost like reducing a fraction. So we end up with x squared plus 4x equals 2. Okay. Now, once you get to this point, we're following all the steps that we did on the front. So we're going to take half of term B. So 4 divided by 2 squared is 2 squared, which is 4. I know some of you are wondering, do we need these parentheses here? No, you really don't. All right, so now we're going to take this 4 and we're going to add it to both sides of our equation. So we have x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals 2 plus 4. All right. The next step says to factor out this trinomial and add this side. So hopefully you're starting to get the hang of how we're doing this. So here becomes x plus 2. And I'm just going to skip that one step where we do x plus 2 times x plus 2. I know that it's going to be squared. And this equals 6. All right. Now you're looking at this and you're thinking, okay, 6 is not a perfect square. What is going on? So this is where you're going to have to use your calculator. All right. And so I know that when I square root this, I get x plus 2 equals plus or minus whatever the square root of 6 is. So we're going to be dealing with decimals. A lot of times this is why we use completing the squares or the quadratic formula, is when you don't have easy numbers to work with. So I'm going to find the square root of 6, and it gives me 2.449, and it goes on forever. We are going to round to the nearest tenths place. And I want to make sure on your homework that that's what it's asking for, because if your homework asks for something different, I want to do what that says. So I'm going to pull that out really quickly. Oh, I'm sorry. Your homework says to round to the nearest hundredths. So let's round to the nearest hundredths. Okay. So it's going to be 2.45. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. 2.45. All right. If you hear that in the background, that is my son baking me some snickerdoodle cookies. Yay, me. All right. So let's go ahead and set this up. We have x plus 2 equals 2.45. And x plus 2 equals negative 2.45. Okay. So let's go ahead and solve this. Minus 2 on both sides. And you get x equals 0.45. X equals negative 4.45. Okay. Oops, wrong color. All right, so there is that one. Let's go ahead and do 7 together. If you're getting the hang of this and you don't need to have me walk you through it, you're more than welcome to finish these problems. Please finish them. And then check your answers when you're done with the video. You can fast forward and all that if you need to. All right. So first step has already been done for us. So we're moving on to step 2, and we're going to divide each of these by the GCF of 3. Now this one's a little different because we have a negative here. All right, so when we factor that out, we get x squared minus 4x equals negative 18. Okay. We are going to take the b term, half it, square it, and we get 4. And so we're going to add 4 to both sides. Okay. And then we are going to factor this and add this. So we have x minus 2 squared equals negative 14. Now we're going to square root this. And we have an issue here. we have the square root of negative 14. And remember, I said whenever you have negatives inside of a radical, you have an imaginary number. And we are not dealing with imaginary numbers, and you will not until Algebra 2. So whenever you come across a product, or not a product, but a solution that has a negative inside of a square root, the answer is no solution. Okay. So for those of you who skipped through the video, and you just saw the answer and you're like, what? Why is it no solution? And you ended up square rooting 14 and trying to solve it. Anytime you have a negative inside of a square root, that means that you are going to have no solution. Now, when you get into higher math and you're dealing with imaginary numbers, you might have a different answer. But with our work in this class, I want you to write no solution. If you end up looking online to get help or whatever, which I'm okay with if you're getting help, and you end up with an answer and you write imaginary something with an I will not take that as the correct answer. So make sure you're doing it the way that I have explained it. So right now, I would like for you to move on to example 6 and example 8. One thing I want you to pay attention to, though, is just because this is a negative doesn't mean that you'll always end up with a negative inside of a square root. You might end up with a positive depending on what you add to both sides of the equation here. So don't just assume this is no solution. I want you to go ahead and solve it out like we did this one and show that it's no solution. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video, give you a moment to work. When the video comes back on, you can check your answers and then we'll be done. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put the answers under the screen. Pause it if you don't want to see it yet. Here are both of the answers. Make sure that, like on example 8, you solve it all the way down to this point. I know some of you want to skip and say, oh, I already know that there's no solution, but I want you to show all your work for these problems. All right, so that concludes lesson 8-8, completing the square.